Hi, everybody. This is Brett Ingram, and this is the optYOUmize podcast, the show that helps entrepreneurs build their dream business and dream life. Today, we're talking with Rob Matzkin, executive advisor, investor, and serial entrepreneur with over 20 years of experience helping senior leaders and organizations raise capital, unlock growth, and gain clarity and strategic direction. I'm super excited because we're all looking for ways to grow our business and optimize our performance and results. So with that, welcome, Rob. Thanks a lot for joining us.
Hey man, thanks for having me. It's great to be here today. So I really appreciate it.
Yeah, it's awesome. Awesome to connect. I am a little jealous that you're in Brazil, but that's all good. So I got a lot of questions that I want to ask you, but can we start off with your personal story? I'm curious about your background and how you actually got started in your career.
Yeah, I mean, I guess how I got started in my career. That's always an interesting question for me because it was very in some ways very intentional, in some ways stumbling around. So long story short, my story started out in school. I'm severely dyslexic, so I didn't read till I was 10 years old. So I always thought I wasn't smart enough or good enough, and academics were never a place that I shined. Athletics certainly were, and I was a collegiate wrestler, so my tenacity, I would say, is one of my greatest attributes. But I grew up in talking business with my dad, growing up in our family business, working in a warehouse, doing all sorts of stuff with him, for him. Growing up, my first official endeavor was a parking lot for the U.S. Open at Wingfoot. It's not far from where you are, and created a parking lot out of my parents' front yard and dealt with the city trying to shut me down and trying to do all sorts of things that I had to jump through hoops on. So that was an interesting endeavor. Um, but I just kind of, in my early 20s, I graduated with a degree in business management thinking I'd go to my family business and realizing I needed to learn business. So started doing a bunch of different entrepreneurship endeavors. Was smart enough or clever enough to have my balance early and ended up moving to Vail, Colorado early on and started a travel agency and concierge service and lived there for a few years. So I guess I've always kind of had this balance thing going on, but moved back to run my family or work in my family business, I should say, and that was the worst year of my life. Family is not necessarily my father, but my uncle wasn't exactly the most the greatest boss. Let's just leave that at that. So yeah, I'll pause there. That's kind of my early endeavors.
Yeah, I mean, that's cool. The family thing I've definitely I've seen firsthand, and I've also studied. I got my MBA from NYU, and one of the classes that we had was about essentially about family business, and it was shocking to me the dynamics sometimes that exist in those circumstances, and it's hard sometimes to separate the business and family thing because there's a pre-existing relationship. So the whole thing is muddled and it makes it very complicated. Sometimes it works out really, really well, but I think you need like the right sort of balance of personalities and skill sets and everything else. And so,
It's
at least
it,
sharpen your
yeah.
resolve.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly sharpening your resolve, but I mean, people look at they had a silver platter or nepotism and stuff like that, and man, the people that could pull off working in a family business have a tremendous amount of respect for the for what they went through, because I think it's the hardest thing I've done was trying to make that dynamic work, and it's just a really hard dynamic.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
So
I totally understand that.
yeah, I remember the most successful person that I knew in my town, which was full of successful people. Uh, he managed high end family business succession planning, and and this is 35 years ago, and their house was $25 million, right?
Wow.
And so it's like you get paid the big bucks to if you could pull it off because it's so
Yeah.
hard.
Yeah, no doubt, no
Yeah.
doubt. It's definitely a different skill set. So I'm curious, growing up with dyslexia, not being able to
Hmm.
read until you were 10, how did that, I mean, obviously you mentioned it sort of affected your self-image early on, but do you think that it had a more profound effect in terms of shaping you both for business and for life? I mean,
Yeah.
did you then bear down and say, I'm going to find a way through this, or did you find alternative ways to figure out to get to where you wanted to be?
All the above. Yeah, I mean, it absolutely had a huge impact in entrepreneurship in the sense that um, I had to be creative. I had to think outside the box just to function, right? So I still see the world tremendously differently than most, right? Even to this day, I'm finally, I'm super short. I'm super short and tight with my writing, and my writing style is super direct. And most people don't really. They want perfunctory. I don't even know. I still don't even understand why everybody wants to read so much. But anyway, just be direct to the point. So now with AI, it's really simple to write really lengthy, in depth proposals that pontificate on things, and it really I love it because it's able to round me out, and I've had gone through a whole roller coaster of emotions with that. But I'm sure we'll talk about that in a bit. But really, yeah, of course it shaped me, and of course it still shapes me, right? I mean, I'll get caught making spelling and grammatical errors, and people will be like, "Are you stupid or something?" I'm like, "No, dude, I'm just dyslexic." Or like, I'll do something, and they're like, "What's wrong with you?" I'm like, "I'm just dyslexic," and I'm like, here in Brazil, it's always interesting being in a foreign country, and language is very difficult for me. I don't it's so nobody even understands dyslexia. I've gone down the rabbit hole in the last 6 months on it, and it's still not fully understood, but at the end of the day, it's a neural processing disorder. So processing language is, it just doesn't click with me.
Yeah.
So they're like, "Why aren't you speaking Portuguese? You're in Brazil, you're here for a month, like speak Portuguese." I'm like, and I don't want to go into my life story or make excuses. So yeah, it's always right there. So every day I have to slough off. It doesn't mean anything. It says nothing about you. What's easy for some is hard for you, and what's hard for most is easy for you. So that's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah, and I think that's it's a really powerful message there because the thing about it is we all have something about us that isn't sort of optimal for whatever it is we're doing, or somebody else might look down on or have an issue with or whatever else, or it might cause us to have obstacles that other people don't. And you're a walking testament to how you sort of just blast through it anyway. You're like, well, whatever. I'm not going to think about limitations. I'm going to go out there, do what it is I need to do, and get the results that I want. And so,
Yeah.
I always love any kind of story like that because I think it's so important for other people to hear that because we all have those moments of doubt or insecurity or whatever else. And so so that's I appreciate you sharing that. So fast
No,
forward,
thanks.
right?
Mhm.
You're advising global companies across sectors. How do you approach tailoring a go-to-market strategy to different geographies or industries? So you're working with a company and they have an idea for a product or a service. What exactly do you do in terms of digging in on that to figure out what the best way to approach that is?
Yeah. So first of all, it's mainly working with internationals coming to the U.S. So, and I understand, obviously, understand the U.S. market, so I have a leg up there. I'm not going to do a go-to-market strategy in Brazil. I'll get lost, right? Maybe, probably, but going back to the core question is, sorry, just actually, I got myself distracted. Repeat the core question is, how do I go about that, or what do I look for?
Yeah, I just if a company comes to you and you're going to be advising them on a go-to-market
Hmm.
strategy, what how do you approach that? Because I'm curious to see
Yeah.
what you would do in terms of evaluating that.
Yeah, no, it's actually really, in my mind, really simple. It's, what are you actually selling, and what are the core principles of business that apply, right? So I was getting into it with a client. We've been getting into it for the last 10 days about go to market strategy. And they come from a very specialized industry and they know what's best for their industry. And I come from a very specialized background where I know keeping it simple and being hyper focused and not taking on too much. And I've learned that lesson too many times, that having multiple target audiences and doing B2B and B2C and not having a huge team and being already an overworked founder probably isn't the best idea, despite how smart and needed it is to go about that. That there needs to be a way of simplifying and squaring a circle. I love that term. Some people have heard it, some people haven't, and my friends make fun of me for using it way too much. But sometimes we need to square a circle and really figure out where those are, really sand down those rough edges, right? But at the end of the day, so like with this client, for example, we haven't come to a resolution yet, but it really is, where's going to be the simple or the elegant way to go about finding that solution, right? So they could execute, right? And what it really comes down to, just to finish the thought, is where is my client at? Where are their resources and capabilities at? And what are they actually capable of doing and capable of executing, right? Because they need to match what they're capable with the market and what they're going to do. A lot of people don't necessarily even take that into consideration and be like, oh, this is the best way to go about it. Sure, with unlimited time and resources, or different tools that you have access to. But sometimes, that's most of the time, that's not always the case. That we have limited time, limited resources, and need to see results really quick. So what are we going to do to start proving that? And then just the next leg of that is, how do we go out and test it? Because the biggest thing that everybody wants to do is, oh, I could vision it, I could see it, I know exactly how this is going to go. Sure, we're all really smart here, but and I like to think that's one of my superpowers, that I can see how it goes. But we need to test it, right? We need to test it quickly and effectively, and we need to listen to those tests. We need to listen to the data to drive us, because we can know all we want, and at the end of the day, it's not going to cut it.
Yeah, there's no doubt that the market ultimately determines. I mean, we're not in a business environment that we might have been 50 years ago, where you had a few major corporations that told consumers what products you were going to have available to you. Now we're at a point where consumers are driving everything because they have such a voice. And so you've got to be able to match that for sure. And I think when you go cross cultural or international, obviously that ratchets up the complexity of that whole thing. So do you see a common mistake there, or is it often that, like you had mentioned, that people try to do too much? It's either too ambitious or there's too many moving parts to what they're trying to do.
I mean, that's just it. It's always everybody. Bill Gates has a great quote: people overestimate what you can do in a year and underestimate what you can do in 10.
I like that.
you know um and he knows a thing, love him, hate him, he knows a thing or two about building something really huge, and ruthlessly doing that and reinventing it. And that company has reinvented itself a few times and is even more of a juggernaut today than, arguably, or even more of a juggernaut today than it once was. And that's no small feat.
Yeah, no doubt. So if a company then starts and rolls out something new, right? And I understand that the context we're dealing with real here is larger companies and we're rolling out things internationally. But I think the sort of concepts apply regardless. How can you
Hmm.
tell whether or not what you're doing is really a fit, or whether you just caught some momentum wave or some sort of temporary like blip or bump in the
Yeah.
market?
So I think Jim Collins says it's best. I guess I'm a quoting machine today, but Jim Collins says it's best. I think it's great by choice, where it's fire bullets, then cannonballs, right? And what he means by that is, He says this in the book. He goes, fire a bullet, which means a test, right? Fire another bullet, which means a test. So if you have a good test, like you just said, you basically had a good test. Fire the test again. Did it come back positive? Yes, it did. Fire the test again. Okay, it came back positive. Then go all in and fire a cannonball, right? Then put all your resources in that. So test again, and then fire resources,
Yeah, that makes
right?
sense.
I think when most people do testing, and I default into this, but it's wrong, is we want the answer to be yes. We want to be right. We need to get to the right answer
And I think
because,
that's go ahead.
no, go ahead.
I think that that's so important too, because it's very easy when you have passion about an idea or you've got a belief that something's going to work. But like you said, that doesn't mean that it's going to. And so if you can detach emotion, right, from it, and you can be analytical about it and process driven, then you can follow something that it's sort of, I think of it sort of like, when you're dealing with investments, right? The stock market or whatever else, the more emotional you are, the less likely you are to be successful because the roller coaster will kill you. I mean, you'll be on top of the mountain one day, at the bottom of the ocean the next. And you've
Yeah,
got to have a system that you're using that is based on something more than hunches and emotion in order
yeah,
to be successful, right?
exactly. Exactly. So, I mean, the other fundamental principles that I really look at is what business are you actually in? Like I was talking to a potential client yesterday, and this is a newer startup actually, and I was doing them. It was a friend, and I was doing them a favor, or a friend of a friend. I was doing them a favor. I was doing their pitch deck review, and I'm going, "What business are you in?" And they go, "We're doing this and this and this." And I go, "But what business are you in?" I'm like, and then I'm like, "Oh, you're the." I'll just I could say I'm like, you're the GoFundMe for this. They're like, no, we're not. We're doing this, and we're doing so much more than GoFundMe. I'm like, your business model is a GoFundMe model. You're gonna take 5 to 10% off the top, and that's what you're gonna do. And it's total transaction volume is what matters. They're like, but we have so many features. I go, cool, but that's your business model. So who are you? You're the GoFundMe for this with your niche. You want to get to $100 billion worth of donation volume. Cool, got it. Now that's a $10 billion like Sam, right? Or market that you could go after. Now, and then the next biggest thing with him was he didn't want to identify as that, which is fine. But for years, everybody was the Uber of this, so it's totally fine to do that. And then the next thing going through it was, well, at the end of the day, all he wanted to do was pontificate of how amazing his idea was and prove to me and every investor he spoke to that this idea and these features are so cool. I don't care, right? What does the market care about? What do investors care about? They care about what you're going to do for them and filling a need, right? And everything else is just a way of lubricating the funnel, right? And getting somebody from the one step to the next or keeping them or retaining them. So this is what I mean by keeping things simple is we all want to get caught up in all these things that we're doing. But at the end of the day, how are you acquiring a new user? Where are you, you're in the marketing realm. Like, where are you screaming from the rooftops, hey, look at me. Hey, you're looking at me. Come here, buy from me, then purchasing from you, and then continuing to pay you or continuing to use you, right? If that's your model, right? If you're a gym, then buying you and then never coming again. But that's a whole other, right? But again, identifying the business model. Planet Fitness, do you know how many people Planet Fitness sells into each box or each location?
I'm sure
Take
a
a
lot more
guess.
than ever go.
But take a guess.
To each location, maybe I don't know, 10,000, 5,000,
60,000. 60,000.
60,000. Wow. Well,
98% of people never go. So, but anyway, but again, it's important to be about, I cut you off, I'm sorry.
no,
Be
it's okay.
be about the who define who you are, right? Because if you define if you're this or that, because let's be real, like even every new technology that comes out, whether it's AI or crypto or anything new, has always been a reinvention of something else, right? Most of these AI models, when you break it down, it's like, okay, you're doing this for this, right? And if you could apply that, especially in the beginning, at some point you could reinvent the wheel, but don't reinvent the wheel in the beginning. And I guarantee, I'll put a lot of money down, if you reinvent the wheel at any given point, you're going to run into a lot of trouble. And if you could do it, if you could, there's all these roadmaps of what to do, how to do it, and just follow those. And that's what I mean by keeping business simple, because the same core
Yeah,
principles are always going to apply.
I like the idea of keeping things simple too. And I'm guilty of it. I overcomplicate stuff. I coach entrepreneurs all the time, and I find that they have a tendency to do that as well. The other thing that I see a lot is, on a small scale anyway, they try something, and if they don't get instant results, they scrap the idea and go to a new idea. So, oh, I created this product, I went to launch it, this course or whatever, it didn't work, so I'll go create. And I'm like, well, how do you know it didn't? I mean, you have to do more analysis and evaluation and know, maybe you just had something wrong in the marketing funnel. Maybe you had something, pitched in the wrong way or whatever else. You're going to go back to the drawing board and start over with a whole nother project, do all this work
Right,
again when you thought you identified a need that you were filling. And to the point about
right. And
gyms,
what,
oh, good.
but just to pause on that, because that's a great point. Somebody does a whole funnel, right? And they test the whole funnel. There's 10 points in the funnel. Each one of them is an experiment. You can only test one thing at a time.
Yeah.
Only one.
And you've got to give
And
it time. You have to give it, work at it and
it needs
try
a
to perfect and
well,
optimize.
I think it needs each test needs a critical mass to effectively run it, right? And each, like I'm doing some outreach for a client to for investors, right? And we are going through the thing, and it's like each subject line matters. Or I was talking to another client, and he's like, "Oh, this campaign was a complete disaster." I go, "Well, okay, let's look at the numbers." He's like, "Well, like nobody opened the email because the subject line sucks." She's like, "Oh, or your emails are bouncing." Oh, so the experiment's not valid, right? But how do we run valid experiments as quick as possible is going to get us the best data, and the best data is going to win.
Yeah, I'm a firm believer in that myself. I did have a client tell me that, oh, no one's, my thing's not selling, no one's buying it. I said, well, how many visitors have hit the page? I don't know. Like, you don't know how many people went to the page, but you think no one's buying it. I mean, so eventually she was able to find the stats. She had like 27 visitors to the page. I'm like, you don't have enough data there to evaluate anything. It may not sell. I'm not saying it's going to sell, but what I know is you don't have a large enough sample size to make any inferences about it. If it made 5 sales, it doesn't mean it's going to sell, because to your point about the testing and everything else, I've run ad campaigns and I've tested things where out of the first 10, 15 visitors, I made a couple of sales and I said, this thing's going to be an absolute grand slam. Then out of the next 100, it doesn't make any at all. And I've had the opposite, where the first 75 visitors or whatever do a thing, do nothing. And then you make 5 sales. So it completely skews your results if you don't have a large enough
Yeah,
sample size, which is just so funny. But it's interesting to me how the knee jerk reaction is, put something up, and if it doesn't immediately catch fire with results, scrap it and go on to something else. And I
yeah,
never understood that, but I see it all the time.
yeah. I think it's like, oh, we tried it. I made my bold move and it didn't work. But make the bold move and look at what's all the different steps that are there. And most of the time, I said this the other day on a call. Most of the time, it's about, and I said this to start, right? It's keep it simple, but it's mainly about blocking and tackling, right? What makes a great I was a high school football player, and what makes a team great is just blocking and tackling, right?
Yeah.
It's like if you could just do the basics and the plays will run itself. Like blocking and tackling is everything. If you could just do the basics, that's probably 80 to 90% of it. And nobody wants to do the blocking and tackling.
Yeah, the tactics and the strategies and all the tweaks, and I see this too with you know persuasion when it comes to sales letters or webinars or whatever. There's a lot of other tactics and techniques and tricks and things that you can use and psychological triggers and all that. But at the end of the day, doesn't it really just come down to initially having an audience that's the target market for what you're offering to start with? Because if you're showing it to the wrong people, you have a 0% chance of making sales. And then having an offer
Yeah.
that is something that they desire.
It's just it, right? So finding the right offer with the right customer, obviously, right? But you could have all that, and what that goes into. It's like, well, you know, if you're doing email, like it's just all these just basic things of like how many people are opening the web page, how many people are clicking the button, is the button visible, is the button working, like, and just going through, and you'd be amazed of how many blocking and tackling. Oh, nobody's buying. Well, the button doesn't work. Nobody can see the button. Nobody understands what the product is. Like, everybody wants to geek out about the email or the copy or what are we saying on the thank you page. It doesn't matter. Blocking and tackling, and then refine it.
Yeah, I love
So
that.
anyway, I think we definitely went down a rabbit hole on this one.
Yeah, no, it's okay. That's all right. That's what it's all about. All right, so let's talk a little bit about raising capital. I know this is
Hmm.
obviously a hot button for a lot of people, especially if they have an idea that they think is the next big thing. So if a leadership team or founder or whatever wants to raise capital, what foundational elements do they need to really have dialed in to make a pitch that's going to be effective for investors to be interested?
I mean, I run webinars on this, and you just asked 5 different webinar topics. So I think there's about 5 areas to cover. I'll try and cover it in 60 seconds without too much detail. But the step one is you need to be $1 billion idea. If you're going to uh, if you're going to raise money from venture capital, right? So that's imperative. Step two is be realistic with where you are and how much capital you're raising. Just because you saw somebody else raise $5 million doesn't mean anything. So, I had a client really geek out. He's like, Open Evidence just raised $250 million and they suck, and they're at a $10 billion valuation or whatever the number is. And I'm like, okay, let's. And I start googling, really actually using an AI model to go down the rabbit hole of Open Evidence, and they've been around, and they're basically a reference tool for doctors to look up basically the newest thing for like prescriptions or procedures for doctors. 40% of doctors are using it, and they don't charge doctors, right? And so 400,000 users of the hardest to get demographic in the country with the highest LTV if they purchase. And this founder of Open Evidence already sold a unicorn company. They've been at it for 5 years. They raised a few $1 million to date. And then they showed all these stats of how they're going to be the next marketing company to doctors. And they raised all this money. But until you look behind the curtain, you go, oh, they're not good. And I could raise all that money because I'm the same. And you're not, because you're not a unicorn founder yet. You're not minted. So, but point is having realistic expectations. Sorry, I went down a rabbit hole really quick on that.
That's
But
all
then the
right.
other thing to really thing to understand is the different um, vocabulary, right? Everybody knows what everybody hears: friends and family, pre-seed, seed, and A. Everybody goes, "I'm seed. I have an idea and I have a product." Maybe. Let me define this for people really quick. Friends and family, they know you. They've known you for years. They're investing in you because they know you. They don't know shit about the idea or care. They're investing in you. Pre-seed, they might know you. They might not. They're really investing in the ability to trust you and execute and the idea, right? Seed, they're investing in your traction, in some sort of proof point that you have shown that this will be successful, and your ability to execute and the idea, but you have real substantial evidence of this. Series A, true product market fit, right? Everything works. You need more people, you need more resources, you need to go quickly. Series B, true blitz scaling, up and to the right, go vertical, just pour as much gasoline on it as you can. But point is, Everybody thinks that they're seed in the beginning. You're not. Unless you have real data, you're not. The other hard part is to this, and nobody's going to like this, is after Silicon Valley Bank collapsed, what I guess 2.5 years ago now, most money moved from pre-seed to seed. There's still plenty of angel money out there, but it's mainly in seed. Pre-seed, really difficult. And then everybody goes, "Well, how am I supposed to get to pre-seed?" I don't know. That's why you hire me and we figure it out, right? And it's like, so you have friends and family money available to you, and you have seed money, and there's some pre-seed, but it's really saying it's pre-seed, but in reality it's seed. So it's how do you get to traction, and how do you get to traction as quickly as possible is the goal, right? Because then you have some proof points or traction or that equivalent thereof. So that's my biggest wisdom there in fundraising, and because if you know your foundation where you stand, then everything else, then you know what to do and what you know what to act upon, you know what to fix.
Yeah, and that obviously makes sense. I know you could see why it would be alluring to get other people to write you a check to be able to build your business for sure. But obviously, it's a lot easier said than done because people want to invest in things that they know have a high probability, or at least a high enough probability of success, or an upside that makes the risk worth it. So in addition to sort of the nuts and bolts, like, okay, so I've got some stats now, I've got, what about a story, right? So,
It's all
do
about the story.
people just invest in the fact that, okay, you've got good numbers, or do they want a story behind it that makes it really pop?
Well, I mean, we respond to stories, right? So you need to articulate things in a way that people get it, right? And you need to everything sales, investing, it's like dating, right? You're dating the prom queen, and you need to get her to like you. And you are the overweight chubby kid in the back with glasses that she'll never go for. But how does that one, and sorry if I'm being offensive, but how does that one win her over, right? And at the end of the day, what do you need to do that? Well, you probably need to be like, we're going to have an amazing life together. Okay, you're going to be able to execute, right? You're going to be able to deliver, and you're probably going to need to be charming as heck, right? So, most of us are going to be, especially in business, are going to be that, especially the first time, are going to be that chubby guy with glasses that's socially awkward. How do we make sure we're the most charming, we're the sweetest, we're the kindest, we're all these things out of this rom com that's going to deliver the prom queen, right? So, to your point, it's what do you need to do, and how do you need to tell the story? Drip out that information. Most people's mistakes in a deck or an early pitch is, oh my god, I need to tell you everything. No, you need to get them curious to ask you the questions. You need to get them saying not I but we, right? And if you could do those things, you're going to be in a really good place. So you mentioned two variables, right? There's risk versus reward. The higher the risk, the higher the reward. So early on, you better show them that you're going to have 100, 200x return on their money, and that you're going to be able to deliver that. If they feel confident on that, they'll invest, right? So that's what it is. It's all this. Again, everything's really simple. It's human behavior. It's risk versus reward, and the higher the risk, and I guarantee you're very risky if it's your first time around, right? You better show great reward and the ability to execute on that. That's why data and some sort of traction is so sexy to investors, because you're de-risking it. You're proving people want it.
Yeah, it sort of goes back to that whole testing idea of rolling out a product too, right? You get enough tests that work, you have confidence that now if we go with the cannonball, we're going to be okay because we're not just basing this on a hunch. We're doing it based on data, based on proof, which is obviously powerful. So let's talk a little bit about relationships in business. I know that look, we live in a world now that, interestingly, is more connected than it's ever been. You can talk to people all over the world, any time, any minute of the day. but oftentimes we're behind our own computers or phones and everything else. We're not in person as much anymore. But even when we were, I've gone to events, I've gone to conferences, and I've shaken hands and collected business cards. And I'll be honest, when I got home, I would never reach out to any of those people because I would be worried they would have no idea who I am or remember me at all. So I know that for you, you say like being a master connector is a big part of what's helped you be successful. How do we cultivate strategic relationships that are like deeper and more meaningful than just pure transactional?
Good question. Right. So over the long term, it's even harder. The basic blocking and tackling post conference, just doing the follow ups, taking pictures of people, sending a note that like reminds the person of what you're doing. Like I remember we had a trade booth once, and I met 120 people that day, but after every person, I took a voice note. I had people behind me sending them follow up emails with details so I could remember putting it in CRMs and doing all the basic blocking and tackling, right? And actually executing it. Now, longer term relationships, it's how do you deliver? Sorry if there's some background noise. But but at the end of the day, it's, really comes down to, I'll tell you what I do, right? I built my network, especially when I moved to Miami. I host dinners, right? I host Shabbat dinner. I have 30, 35 people over. I cook. It's in my house. It's intimate. It's personal. Now, do I spend intimate and personal time with each one of those people? No, but I cooked a meal for you, which nobody ever does today. And I had you in my home, right? So we've already had an openness and a kinship that is going to be way different than 99% of all other interactions that they're going to have, right? What's the equivalent for you? I don't know. Um, but I can say this, that like I know people that take people out to dinner, and 6 high quality people out to dinner every month, and they spend a ton of money doing so. I think that's great too. I mean, when we were younger, we spent the time in the bar with people, but yeah, the more time you could spend with people in quality outings that aren't business, that's why golf is so popular, right?
Right.
I like to think that's what I say. That's why I kite surf. It's not. I kite surf because I love it. But a lot of successful people also kite surf, right? So I don't know. Is that I don't know if that answers your
Yeah,
question or
yeah, no,
not.
totally. I just wanted your
But
take on it
yeah,
because
yeah,
it is interesting. And look, there's not one right or wrong answer, but I'm always curious to know because like I said, I'll tell you one of the things the reason I love to do podcast because I get an opportunity to come on here. We can talk for 45 minutes, and by the time we're done, I feel like we've gotten to know each other. Obviously we're creating value for an audience and all that other stuff, and that's great. But selfishly for me, it's awesome because I get to ask you whatever I want. You got to answer me,
yep.
so that's a lot of fun. But we also get to know each other throughout the process, and I think that's so much more meaningful than just shaking hands and exchanging business cards and then hoping somewhere down the road. So
Well, I mean, no, I mean exactly. And to what you just said in my point earlier, you're doing the Lewis House podcast model. Do you know Lewis House?
yeah, I mean I don't know him personally, but yeah, I know what he does. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, he interviews the best and brightest in the world and gets to know them and calls them friends. That's his way of networking.
Yeah. Which is great. I mean, look, I think the key to it, and this is what I've sort of come to in my 52 years of wisdom, is that because for me, it's funny. I'm actually a pretty open and sociable guy, but I'm not great in forced awkward situations. I don't really like
Yep.
to go to a conference and run around trying to meet everybody. It's just not, I feel like it's a little contrived. And so you got to find the thing that resonates with who you are. If it's natural for you, it'll feel natural for everybody else. And I think that is the best way to just be yourself and get to know people because once you do, it's fascinating. I mean, one of the regrets I have professionally is that I wasn't a good enough connector younger, and so a lot of my entrepreneurial experience, I went through a lot more hard times and a lot more challenges than I think I would have If I had just,
Yep.
there are people with every answer you can imagine out there. And if you connect with other people, it's a lot less isolating, it's a lot less solitary, and you can also find resources and answers to things so much quicker and easier. And I always took the opposite approach. I'm like, I got to put my head down and go, go, go. And it wasn't until years later I realized, I got the approach wrong. I should have built the relationships, and then that would have made all the path a lot easier. But hey, you live and learn. I guess it's good that I eventually figured that one out. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's no Monday morning quarterbacking to think retrospectively, only moving forward, and the fact that you're prioritizing now is everything. But I've also been there too. I wasn't the best networker, and I didn't even know it was a superpower of mine until the last 5 years or so. And it's amazing what happens when you just, I don't know if you've ever done BNI or anything. I did it for a year, and it wasn't for my company. It wasn't successful for my businesses. However, they have a core principle that is what do they say, giver's gain, or another book author would call it go giver, right? But just go and give intros, just make things happen for people, and they don't forget, right? So one of the ways I built my networker was just in that BNI, I made multiple intros for every person there because I could, and they all still know me, right? And that's what I took that out. I hired a VA years ago because I was making about 500 personal introductions a month, right? and and the great thing about that is it doesn't cost me anything. Usually I'll only make two-sided introductions that are mutually beneficial. It's not ever a favor, so both people then like me. I saw this cheesy Instagram post the other day, and I won't even get into it, but the one thing that I really liked about it was the core bit was, it's not how you show up, it's not well, I guess it was a 50-30-20 rule. 50% is showing up, 30% is being in the right room, and 20% is people, what they say about you when you're not in the room, right? Your reputation, what they say about you when you're not in the room, is the most important thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's so true. Just in talking with people, you know, you definitely get different impressions about people, and certain people have an impact in ways that you don't forget. And I think that is one of the keys of having, those meaningful relationships, regardless of how you cultivate them. But just on a personal life note, it just makes life richer. It's just better to connect with people
Yeah.
and be social and all that other stuff, because that's ultimately, collecting all the jewels and sitting in your tower by yourself isn't really a lot of fun, right? I mean, what makes everything enjoyable is experiences. When my wife and I started dating, I was a thing guy. Like, I thought, what a waste of time I don't want to waste my money on like a trip, because it's over in a week, and then what have you got? I'd rather go buy stuff, because then you've got that forever. And she was the total opposite. She's like, life is all about experiences. She's like, it's not about stuff. It took me a little bit, but went 180 degrees on that, and I completely agree with her, because I remember all the vacations we've taken as a family far more than I remember literally anything I've ever bought. And it's like, so I think that it is super important, to make sure that in this day and age of speed, efficiency, and transaction oriented, business, it's important to keep those things in mind too. So I'm curious. You've been an entrepreneur, an investor, a board advisor, a leadership coach. How do you define success based on what you've seen and how far you've come in your life so far?
I get asked that question more frequently these days. How do I define that? And I never have a great answer for it. Um, So I'll tease you a bit. It's such an HR question. No, it's actually it's actually a really great question, right? You know, I think I define success about the quality of my life, right? And I think successful people are the richest people as far as their lifestyle and their quality of life, and and what determines that in their personal life is very personal. It could be friends, it could be family, it could be loved ones, it could be all these different things, right? And professionally, it's also it's like, what's your stress load to wealth ratio, right? Because you could have all the wealth and time, right? So now I'm just making this up, but it's like but I guess articulating the way I really look at it, it's like, what's your stress load, what's your workload, and what's your financial reward? And if you could have low stress, low workload with a high financial reward, and have that ratio there, and have a huge ratio there, I think that's without being afraid to work and work hard, right? And balancing those out and have plenty of time to have a rich personal life that fulfills you, not makes you happy, but fulfills you. I think that's success right there.
It's good. I mean, you came up with that off the cuff, but I think it works. It
I mean,
definitely
it's
fits
as
with
much as yeah, as much as off the cuff. I think I'm really trying to articulate how I live, which is I think I have a very successful life that I strive for, which is no, I have I get to live abroad when I want. I'm spend a month in Brazil. I live in Miami Beach, and I live on the ocean in both places. And I get to do my sports, and I have great friends and great people in my life. And I have a good financial return for not a ton of stress and not an overwhelming amount of work, and what I define as that, right? And working a good amount of hours. So
awesome. Yeah, that's
yeah.
that certainly qualifies, I think, as a good definition of success. All right. So where can people find you, find your products and services, and connect with you?
Yeah. My name, my website, if you Google me, I'll pop up, robmatzkin.com, robmatzkin at Gmail, on Instagram, on LinkedIn, Matzkin. Happy to help with go to market strategy, with fundraising, with growth. Heck, if you need more advice on how to find that balance and happiness for you, also happy to chat about that.
Awesome. Thanks for that. All right, I have one last question, and I'm always curious to know what everyone's going to say. It's what is your number one tip for success as a business owner or an entrepreneur?
Keep it simple. Just keep it simple. That's
I
what we
like
spoke
that.
about today. It's like blocking and tackling the basics. Just do the basics right, and everything else will come.
Awesome. All right. Thanks a lot. Appreciate that. With that, it's just about time to wrap things up. I want to thank you again, Rob, so much for sharing all your insights and great tips with us. Visit robmatskin.com to learn more about his story, explore how his services can help you, and connect with him. Thanks for tuning in. And as always, remember no matter what you want for your business and your life, don't compromise, optimize.